Hello, and welcome to Public Service Announcement. My name is Brooke Sinclair, and I am your founder of the Buy Our Blood Super PAC, otherwise known as the Bloodpac. And I am grateful to come to you today with a public service announcement. We have a bit of a emergency situation that has popped up, and so I am making this a video to go ahead and alert people to the urgent situation that is happening. So, again, I'm here. My name is Brooke Sinclair, and I am the founder of Buy Our Blood Super PAC, otherwise known as the Blood Pack. And I'm here today to talk to you about the recent announcement of the $5 million in reparations from San Francisco. And one second, I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. And actually, and I apologize, I should have had it, but so $5 million in San Francisco. So the Washington Examiner says that San Francisco plans to give $5 million to Black residents, non-lineage specific, Black residents in reparations slammed as racist. Very similar to the concept of when Cory Booker wrote that very false and lying bill for the Black farmers, and it was able to get struck down in court. Because ideally, you're not supposed to be able to do anything for a race, right? And so what happens is anytime they make something that is supposed to be for a race of people, and we all know that race is not real. It's an imaginary construct that does not correctly apply to anything biological. It doesn't apply to your intelligence. It doesn't apply to anything, quite frankly. It's just boo-boo to food. It's just crap. So if you specifically write something for a race, then it could get struck down in court because of the 1964 Civil Rights Acts. So basically, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, if you're not familiar, basically says nobody can do anything that is particularly for just one race. So that's why a lot of legislation for Black Americans has not gone through or has not been brought up, and is only brought up for certain ethnicities or genders, right? LGBTQ. That's why they do that, because of race. And I'll read this now. So the article says, a proposed reparations payment that would give longtime Black residents of San Francisco $5 million is facing opposition. Several critics are calling it racist, because it is racist. Because whoever thought of that, whoever thought it was a great idea to give all Black people reparations, was not paying attention, is not very educated. The article continues. The program, pitched by the San Francisco African American Reparations Advisory Committee, didn't even know that was a thing, claims the $5 million payment would remedy any economic and opportunity losses that Black San Francisco residents have endured over the years. So, one, right off the bat, it's just talking about enduring in general. So, it's specifically isolating a certain group and calling it out, and is not tying the dollars to any particular sort of incident or harm, say slavery by chance, right? So it also says it would also supplement the income of lower income Black households to reflect the area median income for every year for at least 250 years, according to the pitched program. Okay, 1 second. California's storm. It says, no, excuse me. I will be the first lawyer to fight against this, says civil rights attorney Leo Terrell, who is Black, said in a Monday night appearance on Fox News. This is outrageous. It's unlawful. It's unconstitutional. It's racist. But it's not surprising it came from California. That's interesting. Terrell also mentioned that the state of California was always a free state. That's not true. That is literally not true. Later saying in the interview that the United States does not have a race issue. That is also not true, but rather a race card issue. Boo. Whoever this Leo Terrell is, he must not be eligible for reparations. Talk show host and former California gubernatorial former candidate for former politician Larry Elder, who is also Black, defined reparations as the extraction of money from people who were never slave owners to people who were never slaves during his appearance on the network. He was also confused by the suggested supplementation of income for 250 years, noting how the U.S. was not a country until 1789 and that slavery ended in 1865. That's 76 years. That's kind of fuzzy math, said Elder. Elder is what we call a coon. So just put him on your forever eternal coon list. And the article continues. Eligibility for this suggested program would require applicants be at least 18 years old and be an individual who has identified as Black or African American on public documents for at least 10 years. So that means that they took a very small fragment of the actual eligibility requirements for reparations for slavery, because you do, in order to qualify, you do have to be an individual who has identified as Black American on public documents for at least 10 years. But more importantly, you have to have already traced your lineage back to at least the 1870 census, if not earlier. Other requirements for the program are that applicants must meet at least 2 additional criteria, such as having been born or migrated to San Francisco between 1940 and 1996 with proof of residency in the city for at least 13 years, and being a descendant of someone enslaved through U.S. chattel slavery before 1865. Okay, well, that was nice that they got 2 real eligibility requirements and then 2 fake ones, 2 just made up whatever ones. So here's why we do not want state or city reparations. So anytime the state wants to pay for something, it gets money from the federal government. So the federal government in 2016, Newsweek estimated that the federal reparations for descendants of chattel slavery was $151 million per person. Not per family, per person. Let me say that again. The reason you do not want San Francisco or any other state outside of California, we're going to let California go. The reason why you do not want any city or state reparations is because the federal reparations was estimated to be $151 million per person. You're saying, what? how do I know I can believe you? And that's because I'm about to share my screen right now and show it to you. That's how. And we're going to read through that. And you're going to understand why it is so important that people go from, oh, they're never going to pay us reparations, to that's my money and I need it now in a flash. So, reparations studies suggest $151 million for each African American. Now, this, as you'll see, this was printed in 2020. This is actually an updated version. The original article was actually published in 2016 when Barack Obama was president. But Barack Obama chose not to pay Black American descendants of chattel slavery reparations and instead gave more money to the Jews. So let's read this. While debates around reparations for the descendants of slaves often focuses on the cost of action, advocate believes discussions must also address other efforts for systemic change. Okay. I'm going to jump down and I'm going to look for some dollars because a lot of this is Pan-African mumbo jumbo, but I'm going to put this in the link so that you guys can read this. Excuse me, I'm going to put the link in the chat and hopefully you guys can read this. And I don't even know if anybody's actually watching, but it would be cool if people were watching. So let's find out. Oh, you can see that. Okay, let's discuss reparations. How could it be calculated? Okay, so if payments were to be made, the amount that would be calculated could vary dependent on how the cost is estimated. Application of factors such as interest and who would be considered eligible. A study first published on June 19th, ironically that is Juneteenth, looked at the black-white wealth gap alongside the cost of slavery and discrimination to descendants of the enslaved. Among its estimates for the costs are around 12 to 13 trillion in 2018 dollars. Based upon estimates looking at land base stemming from the promise made to freed slaves. They're talking about the 40 acres and the mule. So based on the 40 acres and a mule and inflation, they're estimating that the total costs is 12 to 13 trillion dollars. So now to give you some idea of how accessible 13 trillion dollars is, we were in Afghanistan. America was in Afghanistan for 20 years, and it cost our country $20 trillion. It cost the American government $1 trillion each year that we were in Afghanistan. That's right. Let me say that again. So, for 20 years, the United States government paid paid itself, really, $1 trillion a year to occupy Afghanistan. That does not include the money that we have bent over backwards to give to Ukraine in the past 12 months. That does not include the numerous reparations payments that the United States has made to the Jews, the Japanese, and the citizens of Guam, which is like, what even happened in Guam? We don't know. And so looking at the article goes on to say, looking at the wage-based cost and factoring in interest could be counted up to $6.2 quadrillion. Okay, so when you divide that by 40 million Black non-Hispanic descendants of the enslaved, that basically comes down to $151 million per person. It might be a little overstated figure, but because it does include a few people, a few people who were not able to trace their ancestry. Now, what this article does not take into account are the people who are willingly going to opt out of their reparations. Yes, opt out. So, as a representative of the grassroots grassroots campaigns, we're no longer going through the long, lengthy process of trying to convince people. Instead, we're just offering you an opt out form, a reparations opt out form. And what happens is, well, um, people who don't believe that reparations is going to happen get to opt out of their $151 million. And then the rest of us can split that, can add that to our costs, so to speak. So yeah, I'm gonna skip down. Calculated by tabulating the hours slaves worked between 1776 and 1865. Now, what I should have started today's stream service with is that I personally have been able to trace my lineage back to the Mayflower. I am a Mayflower child. One of my biological grandfathers was a white man who was also our slave master, and his family came on the Mayflower. And the Mayflower is the only ship in my family's lineage. The woman who bore his children was a native who was already here. So I've traced my family back to 1537, and there is zero African. I got some mulattoes, I got Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, but I don't have any Africans. Maybe you may not have African. Yeah. All right. So, as well as reparations based on the earnings, others suggest payment to backdate the failed promise of 40 acres and a mule, and that was reversed by Andrew Johnson. Um, and that's it. So, today we're going to leave you with this public service announcement to do not fall for the $5 million from San Fran when you are actually owed $151 million. I hope you've enjoyed today's public service announcement and hope you come back again. Thank you. Bye-bye.